Thank you.
This webinar of reporting overview, running and creating reports, which focuses on the Ariba buying and invoicing side of things, will be recorded, and the recorded session will be available after 1st of next month on ariba.com. We have all lines muted currently, but if you want to ask a question when we open up for chat and question and answer time, please feel free to do so by pressing *6 on your phone. At the end of the presentation, we will be sending you a copy of the PowerPoint, and you can either give us an email that you would like to use in the chat, or we will use your registration email address. We will be taking questions via the chat during the session today, and please feel free to use the chat, or during Q&A times, unmute yourselves as necessary. With that said, I will hand over to my colleague, Cynthia.
Thank you so much, Tina, and hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this webinar today. The topic for today's webinar is reporting overview. But before we get started, let me just present myself. My name is Cynthia Guimarães. I recently joined the Best Practice Center team back in April, but for the past 20 years, I've been working as a SAP FICO senior consultant, including SAP. And for the past 7 years, SAP also uses Ariba applications as solutions. So I've been implementing some of the SAP Ariba P2P solutions for SAP as well. Today's webinar, the intended audience is for analysts that need to report on the health of your system, and administrators as well. We were going to be talking about analytical reports that will help identify what's going on your system and to be able to report to different levels of your organization. So we're going to go through a list of different topics today. We're going to talk about permissions. We're going to talk about different types of reports that you can create and modify, how to restore reports. One important topic for me is some terms that once you get them, it make easier for you to understand how to create a report. So we're going to go through some important terms that we use regarding to reports. We're going to talk about some main components for building the report. Then we're going to make a break, see if you guys have any questions before we move on to a real demo, where we're going to show all these functionalities. And after this demo, we're also going to be talking about how to save reports on a dashboard, how to email and schedule reports on the background, and some of the recommendations and best practices regarding to reports. Also, I put together a session at the end with reference to a few documents that are going to be very useful for you when you start building reports. And I will be able to share also those documents together after this webinar. All the reference documents listed on the last page as well. So let's get started. In this session, we would have as the main goal making sure that you understand how to create your own report, how to modify prepackaged reports that already exist on your system based on your subscription. And we'll be able to create one new report, and I'll be modifying one of the prepackaged ones to show you how to save it, how to store, how to save it on the dashboard. So we're going to be using one as an example. But let's start talking about permissions. There are some specific reporting system groups that will give access to users for accessing the report. One of these groups is called report user. And It runs the existing reports that are already available on your site, and it will give data visibility depending on the access control that is set behind the scenes. There is also the report manager, who can run existing reports and can create new reports, which we were going to be doing this during the demo. One very common question that we received is that which group permission gets access to the prepackaged reports? So there is a special permission called the analyst authorized that will give access to these prepackaged reports. And by default, this permission is assigned to certain system groups. And before we get started with the demo, I will show you the list of which system groups can have access to these prepackaged reports. So again, what you can see in terms of reporting, the data that you can access, it will depend on your user permissions, and it also depend on which applications, which solutions you have turned on in your system. Now let's talk about some different types of reports. As I mentioned before, we have what we call prepackaged reports. They are default reports that are usually the most common needs for your solution. You have the option to run them the way as they are provided, or you can even save with a different name, and then you can customize to do some changes and to meet your company needs. We're going to see one example. And you can also create reports from scratch to select your own sets of tables and fields and display the way as you desire. Storing reports. So as I said, Ariba has some reports that can cover some common needs on the solution. And you can choose to copy them into your personal workspace, so only you can see it, or you can make it public. And it will depend on the license solutions that you have. And one very important thing to remember is that the prepackaged reports, they only use out-of-the-box fields. If you want to add a custom field, you would have to save the prepackaged report with a different name and then add the custom fields. The personal workspace reports, they can only be accessible by the person who created the report, and they can be hidden from others by saving in the personal workspace. And public reports, they are available to all users, unless there's, as I said before, there is some access control set in place that will prevent certain users from accessing the data. So if you are to take something very important from this webinar today, I think once you understand the next, I would say 2 or 3 slides, you will have a better idea of how reports work within Ariba buying and invoicing and the whole overall solution. We have what we call the fact tables. They are groups of fields on the header and the line item, and they are related to different areas of the system. So we have different fact tables for procurement, for sourcing, and all these groups of fields, they are grouped together in a fact. Out of all the facts that we have for buying and invoicing, if you were to look for the most complete ones that have the highest number of fields, you will be using a purchase order fact table or invoicing fact table. So keep that in mind when we start creating our report. Keep that in mind about the fact tables, the groups of fields. Measures. There is a section when you're creating a report that requires at least one measure. They are numerical fields, and they are used for a calculated measure. We also have what we call dimensions. They are all fields, but they are not measures. You can use them to build the pivot tables or for drill down. So I'm going to show some examples on the next slide, but for example, they can be gender, can be commodity codes is one that is mostly used. We also have another important term called hierarchy. So is the expansion of a dimension which I explained on the previous slide. So let's just use this example, the UNSPSC commodities. For example, let's say it has 4 levels of definition. So you can choose to which level you want to display the results. This example here, the information technology is level 1, computers and peripherals level 2, peripheral devices level 3, and trackable is level 4. So when you create the report, you can select the hierarchical level that you want to display the report. Some of the reporting main components, and if you ever try to create a report before, you will remember this as steps 1, 2, and 3. On step 1, you will be naming the report. We'll be selecting the fact tables, and the system allows you to select up to 3 fact tables. And you'll also be selecting the measures for that report. On the pivot layout, that's where you're gonna start selecting which fields you want to see as part of the report. And then on refined data, that's where you can select the data range and set some filters, for example, to exclude certain criteria. And then finally, when you display the report, the report result, that's where you can see the report in an aggregated view or a detailed view. So before I go ahead and start the demo, do we have any questions, Tina, so far?
No questions at this point. There were a few, but those were answered already real quick in the chat.
Okay.
No.
Sounds great. So I am here on my test site, and as we mentioned before, we have the prepackaged reports, we have the public reports, and we also have the personal workspace. So to get started, let's go to the prepackaged reports and see the options that we have. So again, what you're gonna see here, it will depend on the functionalities and the solutions that you have available on your site, and also will depend on your user permission. So for today's session, I will be using some purchase order reports, and we'll click on open. I have my favorite report here that I like to use for demos. We're going to check the received not invoiced report. So you click on open. Here you can refine the data that you're going to show. It comes, the time period is available in years, quarters, or months. I'm going to be selecting for months. The most recent time period, so it will be selecting for 2 months. And you can also have the option to select for future periods. And if you want to include the current partial month, let's say we are in October 23rd, I want to see the most recent time period. I would select 3 months, and I want to also see the 23 days of October. So I will be selecting, selecting here include current partial month. Or you can either fix a data range from to date that you want to display. So for this example here, we're just going to display the report, and it brings the information, all the fields are already pre-selected on this prepackaged report. If you go and click on Edit, and that's what we're going to start today's demo, you will have the chance to modify that report. And that's where we open up what I was referring before to steps 1, 2, and 3. So let's just take a look at source data and just put some information here. So on step 1, source data, this is where you will be naming the report. So let's say I want to save this report. I'm just going to put my initials for this demo. And you can add a description to this report. Let's just say demo October 2019. Here you have also the option to select the report currency, and this is based on the user preference. You can change this by going to your profile and changing the currency, the preference currency on your profile. In my case here, it will be selected, it will be showing in dollars. Also, from the data source, as I mentioned before, the system allows you to select up to 3 fact tables. You see that in this case here, the table that is selected by default is the purchase order fact table, but you could also select an additional fact table. So let's say I will select the invoice as well. So before I do that, when I check the available measures, because I selected a second fact table, which is invoice, it also opens the available measures for that fact table. If I do not select anything here, you see that all available measures are only the ones related to the purchase order. But for this example, let's just select invoice as well. Depending on the fact tables that you select, you're going to have some data options here. In this case, it's asking if you'd like to include purchase order data that does not match invoice data. So depending on the combination of main fact tables that are selected, you might receive some options here as well. Here are the available measures. As we mentioned before, you need to have at least one measure selected. We can go back here later on, but let me show you just quickly that you also can select and create user-defined fields. And the way as this works, you can give a name for the field, give a description, and then you can select a formula. The way as it works is pretty much addition minus multiply divided by. So you can make, let's just say, amount invoiced less amount accepted. You can call, you can give a field name for that formula, and then you can add it to your report. I'm not going to be adding anything today here, just to make this simple. And you see that because I'm on source data, what is showing here for me in blue is the data field. When I move to the pivot layout, I have to select at least one data field. Say amount invoiced, and then I can add that to the report. So my data has the field amount invoice selected here. So when I move to pivot layout, in this step 2, you can select the fields from the list of fields in the left panel. And you can add them to the right panel, which will allow you to design your own report and which data you should be displayed. You can also here, and this is, I would say, 90% of the times, you won't be using the hierarchies. You probably will be using the available fields as an option. So it will show from the purchase order, and you can also select here if you want to see all fields available from the purchase order fact table, or if you want to see all the fields from the invoice fact table. Let's just say I want to see only for the purchase order. And you can do the selection of fields. You can add fields to the row or to the detail of the column by looking at this list. Let's just find one additional field here to add. Let's just say I would like to add payment terms. I have the option to add as a page field, as a row field, as a column field, or as detail field. For this purpose, I'm just gonna add as a detail field. You can also switch the order that the fields are displayed here by just holding and drag and drop to the top, or just holding the field and drag and drop to the bottom and put on the right order. If you feel like this is bringing too many fields and you don't even need all of that, you can, from here, let me just move this cursor here, you can remove that field. So let's just remove the fields that let's just say, to make a cleaner description. I don't want description. I just want a cleaner reporting, and these fields are enough for the purpose that I want. So on page fields, you include the fields that you want to use as filters. In the column fields, this is the information you want to group in a column in your report. The detail fields, that's the data that you want to see on the detail view when you go to the result page. And the row field, this is the information that you want to group in a row on your report. And I can tell you, it will make it easier once you start playing around and creating your own reports. Then you will see the effect and which field is going where on your report. Next, we'll go to refine data. And this is where I mentioned before that you can select the time period that you want to display. In this case, we'll be selecting for 3 months and including the partial month. I don't have a lot of data on this testing system, but we'll be able to see some. From here, you can also save this report. So let's just save it. And you have the option, as I mentioned before, you can do it. You can save as a public report, or you can save on your personal workspace. So in this case here, I will be saving on my personal workspace. So if I go here now and go back to my personal workspace, I will be able to see the report that I just saved today. And then from this page, I can click on Open, and then I can view the report. I think I don't have enough data. Let me just put it here. So this is how my report is gonna look like. So this was an example of picking one prepackaged report, renaming, changing the fields that you want to display, changing the fact tables, and making your own report and saving it with a different name, and also making available into your workspace. We'll now move to creating a report on your own. But before we move to that, do we have any questions, Tina?
Yes, we have a question of, can you do a fixed date of just one day if you need a report for an individual day?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Can you do a fixed date of just one day if you need a report for an individual day?
I am not sure if I understood the question. Do you want to take this one?
Sure, absolutely. So you can just report on one day. That is absolutely possible. You would just put from that day to that day, and it would show that the data of that day. So yes, it is possible.
Thank you. I was not understanding the question. Thank you.
Yeah, that's okay. Another question that just came in is, if we have various business units, are we able to select a particular one from the advanced options? Not sure if you would. Okay, if you want to try and answer that one. Or?
I'm having trouble hearing you. Can you please repeat the question? If
Sure. If you have various business units, are you able to select one from the advanced options? So can you narrow it down to just one business unit?
Once you are in the reporting and displaying the data, you can set some filters there as well. So I can show
you could go to page field, put a field in at the page field, and just select that business unit or multiple business units.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's a couple ways you can do it.
So do we have any more questions before we go ahead and show the analytical report?
So it says the new report, will it be available for all, or will it be seen in the public's report?
It will only become available if you save as public. If you save as personal, it will only be available on your personal workspace. And even the reports that you save as public reports, depending on the control sets, depending on the user permissions, some users might be able to see it and others might not be able to see it. It really depends on their user group permissions as well. So it's a combination of both.
Okay.
Okay.
I think that's it for now.
Good. So let's see. In this example, we chose an existing prepackaged report and we modified it to create our own, and we saved as in our personal workspace. So if I am to create the analytical report from scratch, I would go to create analytical report, and then here pretty much I would just follow the same logic. Let's just say I'll call webinar demo reporting number 2. And then here you can put a description. Again, the report currency will be based on your user preference. And you can select the fact tables that you want. Just say purchase order. I can select. And the list of the second fact table, it will depend on the main fact table that you selected. So if I select purchase order, these are the options that will come after. And then if I select invoice, the options of fact tables available, it will depend on the combination of purchase order, invoice, and then let's just say invoice exceptions. And if you were looking into this screen, you saw that when I selected invoice exceptions, it also automatically include this option. Would you like to include invoice data that does not match invoice exceptions data? Would you like to include purchase order that does not match invoice data? So the combination of these two gave me this option, and the combination adding invoice exceptions gave me this option here. So it follows the same, pretty much the same logic. There's not many changes there. Let's just say as a measure, and again, available measures, you have to have at least one field added to the report as an available measure, otherwise you get an error message saying. And let's move to the next. And then on the pivot layout, again, you can switch to the available field. And here you have the purchase order, invoice, and invoice exceptions fact tables. And then you can select the fields for each one of, from each one of the fact tables. You can expand, and you can, from here, pick any field that you want. Let's just pick commodity code, and then you can decide to add the page level, at the row field, at the column field, or the detail field. I'm just going to add a column field. And you can include or exclude more fields for this. And on the refined data, we already saw this, and then you can select the field that you want to display this report. And then you can just run the report. No items found. Again, I don't have a lot of data here on this pricing side. Let's just switch to years and then run the report again. It doesn't, just this special example, I don't have a lot of data. Let me just go back and add it, and then you can always, from the point that you were at the report, you can always go back here and then add it and refine data and add more fields. And then once you're done, then you can save the report. But for from a demo perspective, let's just go back here and then use, I'm not going to save this report, but you can also here switch and then save in public if you want. I'm just going to discard this one. I'll be using the report that I just saved on the personal workspace as the example. Then we're going to take a look now at the different views. Let me just switch to years to provide some more data. So here we also have, you see that this report is displayed as a detail view, and then you can, from here, you can switch to aggregate view. And then show also in this case here is showing by PO, the invoice amount by PO, and you can switch back to the detail view. Let's just see data, how far this goes. Yeah, it only has these columns here. So in this case, it's showing the PO ID, the order date, the requester, the commodity code, the ERP supplier, the GL account, and if you want, you can add more fields to that. You can also From this view, you can also apply more filters. Let me just say, from this, let's just say for the commodity code, you can click on select others. And if you want to select a specific field that you would like to put as selection criteria, let's say commodity codes that contain, I don't know, 4999. I don't have this commodity code here, but just as an example. Then you can include more filters to the report. I'm not gonna save this. The other, what else here? Let me just go back, reset. Okay. View line item requester. You can now also make changes to your report to improve the readability. You can make switch the rows, the row field. Let's just say in this case here, you can move the field to the left or you can move the field to the right. I just moved requester to here. But you know, you can always go back there and then change the order from there. Commodity code, let me just see this one. You can also show this field on rows or in columns. Let's just switch to rows. You can have a different view. So there's a lot of different ways of doing that. But since I want to show you guys a little bit more information about other topics as well, let's just move on with some of the other slides that I have. And then if you guys have any questions, we can always go back here. From this point, you can also edit. That's what we were doing. You can save. You can display the options. You can export the data to Excel, and you can also configure the export. We're not going to be covering this today, but if you want to learn a little bit more about how to configure the export to have this report saved in an Excel file, you can contact the VPC consultant assigned to your account, and we'll be glad to show you some options here. Let me just go back here quickly to the PowerPoint. We also have the possibility to save the reports on the dashboard. So let's say some users do not have permission to the report, but you can save a view of that report on their dashboard, so people can see reports created by someone else. There is a limitation in terms of the number of columns and rows that can be displayed. I can show you how it's going to look like. And you can choose to customize by changing the layout and deciding if you want to save the report on the right side of the dashboard or on the left side of your dashboard. And then you can also, from the dashboard, you can also minimize the report, or you can delete it from the view. And one important thing to remember is that I'm going to show this in real time, but the fields that you use on the current chart and the pivot table, they will be visible on the dashboard, but it will depend on the first field selected as column fields and row fields when you're building your report. So let's take a look at that. So if you go here and then click on dashboard, I don't have a dashboard yet for that. But this view, it will depend on the fields that are selected when you're building the report. So you can come here and then you can add it to dashboard. And then you can save. And when you save, you have the option to decide where you want this to be shown. Let's say On your main page, you see My Documents, Watch It, Project Notifications. You want the reports to be the first thing that you see in the morning, or you can either move it to the right column. Let's just say the first thing that you see here in the morning. And then when you click on Done, and then you can go back to your dashboard. So you can see a snapshot of that report here now available on your dashboard as well. I'm going to make a pause and see if we have any questions so far. No? Hello, Tina?
Yes, we do have a question. It would be useful to show where in help the reporting fact table information can be found. So there's a couple questions around which fact table do I use.
Okay, yeah, we can definitely do that in this part of the presentation, and also have some material around that. I'm going to show this in a few minutes as I have a slide for that. Besides that, do we have any other questions?
There's also the question regarding the dashboard. It says, if the data in the report is updated, for example, newly placed POs, does the report update itself, or do you have to rerun it? So new data is added automatically. It updates itself.
Yeah, it's real time. Okay. So let's move on to one of the last topics, then I can go back to the fact tables and talk a little bit more about that. You also have the option of emailing or scheduling the report. So you could email the reports to users that do not have access to that particular report, or you can share with people outside of your organization. When you're doing the scheduling, and we're going to see that, there's what is called the number of days and the number of runs. The number of days is the amount of time results that are stored for a report when you run. And the number of runs is the number of times that the report is stored to keep for your record. So let's just say you ran the report 3 times, and when you run for the 4th time, the oldest one gets deleted and replaced by the newest one. And I believe there is a limit per person and per realm of how many reports you can be scheduled to run automatically in background. If I'm not mistaken, and I can check that information, I think it's 5 reports per person or 15 reports per realm, but I can check that information as well. Let's just take a quick look at scheduling and mailing the report. So I'm going to go back here to my personal workspace. And if I click on this report, I have the option to run in background. And then from here, I already have selected 3 years. Let's just say that's the data range that I have. And here on the schedule, you have the option to run as soon as possible, run once at a certain time, let's just say right now, or you can run for a period of time, let's say for during 2 weeks or 3 weeks, every Sunday, 3 a.m. If it's a report that's going to take a little bit longer and you want that to become fresh and available on everybody's dashboard on Monday morning, and you know there's no activity going on, let's just say you can run that on Sunday night, and then that will become available on everybody's dashboard on Monday morning. Here's what I was talking about, the number of days or runs you keep. Let's just say you want to keep, for how many runs you want to keep. Here I just selected 3 times. And you can attach the report to the notification email, and here you can choose the recipient. So Yeah. And you can put multiple email addresses here as well. I'm just going to save. So this is the schedule, and the schedule to run once. If I had selected for a longer time, it would keep a snapshot, a picture of this report for 3 times if it was scheduled for, let's say, run today at 11:46, tomorrow same time, and the day after the same time. And I'll just click on schedule. If I go back, I'll just wait for 1 more minute. If I go back here to my personal workspace and then go back to that report, and then you can from here view your stored results. This is from last night. So if I had scheduled for 3 days in a row, it would show 3 details here, 3 results, and you can open. And that is pretty much a picture of that exact moment when the report was run. You can use that to compare data between days. So since we only have, I think, 13 minutes left, let's just move on. And in case there are any questions we cannot answer today due to the time that we have that is limited to 1 hour, please feel free to write down your questions on the chat, and then we can send you the answer via email, the email that you used to register for this webinar. So some of the best practices that we talk about in terms of creating the report. There's this prepackaged report reference guide that will help you to define for what exactly each one of the prepackaged reports are for. And then looking at this guide, you can take a look and see if that will meet your company's expectation. Let's just move quickly. Prepackaged report reference, and I saved some of these documents, and I'll be sending you guys all this documentation as well. So for each one of the reports available, let's just say approval reports, overview. It will tell exactly for what is this prepackaged report, and also for each one of the reports, it will show all the fact tables that are involved for the report, all the measures that are available, all the role fields for each one of these reports. So I'll be sending you a copy of this purchase order, spend with charges and taxes. What is this prepackaged report for? What are all the fact tables that involve this? What are the measures and the role fields available? Okay, so this is one guide for you to keep.
We're not seeing the guide, Cynthia.
Sorry, can you say that again? You cannot see it? Okay, let's just share. Sorry about that. Let's see. Can you see now? Oh, no. Right.
Yes.
Can you see now?
Yes.
Okay. So sorry about that. Yeah. So this document, it has all the available prepackaged reports that are out there, and if you take a look, let me just go back up. It shows all the by solution, all the prepackaged reports that are available. And it also shows for each one of the prepackaged reports, what are the fields that are available, what are the main fact tables involved. Let's see if I move on down here to show. It will give you more information about each one of this report. There's also this guide, Creating Analytical Reports. There's like a step-by-step on how you can create an analytical report in case you cannot find a prepackaged report that will be useful for you. This document helps you to find which fact tables you can use for your report. And also there's this very nice guide that shows the fact relationships of all the fact tables. I think it's on page 31. So creating analytical reports. Let me know if you can see that document when I open. Yeah. Can you see it?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. So let me just move on to page 31 that I was just referring to. This is going to show a little bit small for you, but once you get this documentation, let me just see if I can make this a bit bigger. So it will show all the fact relationships between all the tables. And remember that I said that the invoice fact table and the purchase order fact table are the ones that contain the highest number of relationships. So you can see that, for example, the invoice fact table has a relationship with a contract, it has with invoice exception, invoice payment, and so on. So take a look at this document as well. But the main purpose of this document is to show you that there's a step-by-step on how to create the report from scratch, or to reuse an existing report as well. Let's see. One important thing just to keep in mind, when you choose the fact tables related to approvals, the INV document is not an approvable document. So if you want to report, you have to choose IR as the approval document. And some best practices about when creating or modifying an existing report. You can also use this SAP Ariba reporting field dictionary guide. It's an Excel file that we show that will give you about all the fields and all the reporting facts and dimensions. There's also this reporting fact reference that also describes all the Ariba facts, what they are made for. And I showed you, I mentioned about this before, the prepackaged reports, which group permissions give access. So let's take a look at this SAP Ariba reporting field dictionary. So it's an Excel file. You can download it from the Ariba Connect. Hopefully it's open up. So here by fact table, let's just use that fact table that we were looking before. But here you can have all the different functionalities. Let's just say I want to see one of my favorites, P-card. A fact table, sorry. Let's take a look at purchase order for procurement and invoicing. So this fact name, and then it will show all the fact descriptions is for purchase order, and then all the fields available within the fact table purchase order for procurement and invoicing. What is the field label? What is the field path, solution, and all the information that you need regarding to that field for that particular fact table. The other file that I mentioned is which group permissions give access to prepackaged report. So here for sourcing, contract, and also procurement and invoicing. So here are all the user groups that will have access to the prepackaged reports and what exactly they can see it. So for example, the financial processing analyst, members of this group can query all approvable documents, or the invoice entry user, query invoices for themselves and subordinates. They can view and run reports for themselves and for their subordinates. So you'll be receiving a copy of this as well. And I think we had one more that I mentioned, the reporting fact reference. This is another very good documentation that can use as a reference for all the fact tables. Let's just look for that one that we were using it as an example. It will explain for the goal for that fact table, all the fields that are available. Let me just go back here. And all the reports that are available as well. And all the fields and the description of the fields. So it's a little bit more detailed information compared to the Excel. One really nice thing about prepackaged reports is that you can play around in production or in testing because they cannot be overwritten. It will always force you to save it with a different name, so don't worry, go ahead and start playing around the prepackaged report. Some other information, useful information here is that once you select, I think I mentioned this before, that when you select the second and the third fact table, if you're missing fields on your report, and remove all unnecessary fields from your report. We say this is best practice. I mentioned about the report currency, that if you want, you can change this on my profile, and that most of the time you'll be using available fields instead of available hierarchy. So make sure before you start selecting the fields that you always switch to available fields. It will make it easier to build your report. And we saw this as well, that you can export, edit, play, or configure a report. Make sure to choose the right type of multi-fact report. Trends and aggregate report by common dimension, and line item level data, where you can have the different facts that match along with the join fields. And use those documents that I'm going to send you as a reference to understand better the join fields. And limit the number of fields on the pivot table for multi-fact reports using the detail view or the aggregate view. You can limit the number of row and column fields. Our time is almost up, but also take a look at some P2P usage reports. They usually use for IT departments to monitor your software usage. If you want to enable, you need to contact your customer success manager or account manager. The P2P user report is available under the prepackaged report, and it's also available in SAP Ariba Procurement Solutions. That only the users that have access to prepackaged reports can see the P2P usage report. Let me just show it very quickly, if I can, if we still have a few minutes, Tina. When you go back to manage prepackaged report, I think it's at the bottom. System and benchmark usage reports. Usage report. And then P2P usage reports. That's where you can find them. And you have all these measures that you can check: invoice spend and count by source system, invoice count by amount by commodity. They're very, very useful. There's a big list of them here for you to check. So this is the list of documents that I will be sending along with this presentation that we just saw. And perhaps you want to start the poll questions, Tina. Just remember to register for one of our webinars coming up now in November. We have very good webinars available in next month. And then if you need, so do you want to go ahead and start the poll? I will stop presenting. Yes. Stop sharing. Okay. And then on the meantime, if we have any questions that would like to answer on this while we run the poll. Yep, I will do that. Just a minute. I need to, and I apologize if it was a little bit too fast, but I wanted to fit as much information as possible. You see that will be very useful once you start taking a look at the documentation. that I'll send to all of you.
We will start the poll in just a moment. We've managed to answer a bunch of the questions as we were going along.
And as I said, if you are interested on knowing a little bit better, go a little bit deeper, my advice to you is to try to, if you haven't used reporting before, try to play around with the reports that you have, the prepackaged ones, save with a different name, change the fields, play with the rows, the columns to see how it will look like the results on the next page. That's the only way I see to understand better what exactly does happen when you select as a row, as a column, or as a page, or as a detail. And then once you have played enough, and if you do have hours available with your VPC consultant, schedule a call to then start discussing your needs, your specific needs. Do we have any other questions on the chat, Tina?
At the moment, we do not. The poll is open, and we appreciate you taking the time to respond to the poll. And yeah, right now there are no additional questions in the chat that came in. We'll be sending out the presentation and some of the documents. And again, the recording will be available later. So if you do want to ask a question, you can also press star 6 to unmute yourself. It's also an additional option. We'll stay on the line for another moment. So don't be shy. If you have any questions, let us know.
I believe, Tina, that when we do the next reporting webinar, probably next year, we can go a little bit deeper in some more of the functionality, like the export. Unfortunately, we didn't have time enough to show today, and was also not on the scope. But hopefully, we can put it together something that will give some more information about scheduling. Actually seeing some of the results. We didn't have enough data on the test site today, but hopefully it was enough for everyone to see and understand the main concept and how to create the reports from scratch and how to use existing reports and modify them.
Yep. Now, there was one question that just came in that says, tell me through the log of BG report. I'm not sure what a BG report is, so Kumar, if you can clarify, that would be good.
I couldn't hear you. Can you please repeat it?
There is a log available of the background report, and of the different reports that you have scheduled as background reports. That's under the admin function, and in the reports section there under admin, that is available. So, yep, no problem. I'll be happy to answer that question. We've got just a minute of polling left. Thank you again for helping out with the poll.
And once again, please contact your BPC consultant for future questions. If you have any specific questions that you'd like to see a certain report, and if it's possible, if you have questions about creating custom fields, adding custom fields to the report, also creating the formulas, please contact your BPC consultant. We can help you with that as well.
Indeed.
I think we have only a few seconds left on the poll.
Yes. Okay, and almost complete.
So I'd like to take this last minute to thank you all for joining this webinar today. For us, it's very important to see all of you present today, and this helps us to understand how useful this information is being to you. So thank you so much for also answering to the poll. And thank you, Tina, for being a great host today. And I hope to talk to you, all of you, very soon.
Yes, thank you, Cynthia. And we will be ending the recording and the session now.